Are you listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any other platform where you can leave a rate or review? Do you like what we're doing? If the answer to all of that is yes, please consider quickly giving us a 5-star rate. And if you wouldn't mind leaving us a nice review, we greatly appreciate that as well. Okay, let's do this.
Hello, welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm Mackelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 278 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 6 of A Dance with Dragons, that is The Merchant's Man.
Oh, let's find out who that is. But as always, we're going to chat about the chapter and try not to spoil any future plot points for you. Unless, of course, you have a Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer tier that includes spoilers, then we will spoil things for you. Regardless, hopefully we'll provide you some entertainment along the way.
We'll summarise what happened, discuss our thoughts on it, provide some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry and cover some relevant news and listener correspondence. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter. How are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. I avoided we had a tornado warning today, which is one step up from a watch. I think warning is one has been spotted, right?
I don't know. I don't pay attention to these things. But I have a window office on a kind of like 4th floor sort of. Yeah. And so I had a really good view. I was standing looking at the wild storm out there, but I didn't see anything that looked like a tornado, but...
Yeah, it was over lunchtime, and I went to the gym over lunchtime, and, we got this warning, and I'm at the gym when we get this warning, and I could hear everyone's phones. We got that message, it beeps a whole bunch of times, and it comes up on your phone, and it's all caps, tornado warning, and it gives advice, like take shelter, lowest place in the house, or the dwelling, or whatever, and nobody's reacting in any way. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll go about my workout.
If you run out of there screaming, you look like an idiot.
Right. But then Stacy texts me on the text thread that also includes Molly and says, "Did you just get this tornado warning? I'm in the basement with the dog." And Molly starts freaking out from, an hour and a half away. I was like, why? Why did you text on that thread? So she said, "Dad, get home now." And I said,
I can't leave the gym. Everyone's playing it cool here.
Right. I kept looking around. Nobody was reacting in any way.
So I was in the office, and our office building, you know it has a huge atrium with a glass roof.
Yes. Think of like Embassy Suites, kind of.
Okay.
For people who don't know what our office looks like.
Okay. But when it rains hard, that is an incredibly noisy thing, that roof.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Uh-huh.
Because it's all glass at the top, right?
Exactly. It was the loudest I've ever heard it today. It was like a train was going over the roof. It was so loud. And simultaneously, because it was at lunchtime, and the bottom of the atrium is the cafeteria, 500 phones went off simultaneously.
Oh my goodness, that's right. Yes, because it's so open. Like, I was at the gym, there's probably 25 phones that went off, and I noticed even with the earbuds in, I bet it sounded like just chaos.
Yeah. But they were giving out free cake today for employee appreciation, so believe me, nobody moved.
Well, there wasn't really any place to go at that point. I guess that building does have a lower floor.
It does have a lower floor. Yeah, you can get out. I do worry about that because I remember a long time ago I was in Atlanta during an ice storm, and I stayed in the Peachtree Plaza. Maybe it's like a 72-story high hotel, and it has it's like a cylinder, the building, and the top floor is a bar that rotates, which is
cool.
Kind of cool.
Yeah.
But at the bottom of the hotel, there's bits that stick out, sort of like aircraft hangars, kind of like, with arched roofs. And in this ice storm, ice built up on the roof of the hotel, and then slabs
Oh.
of ice would fall 70 stories straight through the roof of that
Oh
building.
my
Straight through.
goodness.
Like,
Wow, that's dangerous.
exactly, as if nothing was there, as if nothing had slowed that piece of ice down.
Oh my goodness.
Uh-huh.
Wow. Yeah, that's dangerous.
Yeah, it was.
Well, onto less dangerous things, I think.
You're counting your chickens there, my friend.
I know. You have something in the witty banter here that seems on the surface like it's a nice thing.
Yeah, it was Carson's birthday last week.
Happy
Honestly,
birthday, Carson.
Yeah, well, thanks. I'll pass that along. I don't remember why I wrote it. I wrote it obviously because I thought something humorous would happen, and nothing did. I don't think.
Well, there's still time.
I didn't mess up so badly that I was decapitated, so that's good.
I was wondering if maybe there was something went wrong, like your birthday when you ended up having the dog eat your food and crap everywhere. Is that how that went?
Oh my God, I
was
don't
your
remember
birthday,
that at
right?
all. Can we?
Really?
That's why we have the podcast. It's to have a record of my life that we can go back and listen to.
I feel like it was your birthday. Remember the dog.
The dog did eat my food on my birthday. Yes, it did.
Yes. And wasn't the dog in the bath? Weren't you bathing the dog because the dog made some sort of mess or crap?
Rolled in something?
Oh yes, God, I think that's what it was. Rolled in something.
Oh.
You were bathing the dog, and while you were cleaning up afterward, the dog ate. I can't remember which dog, so
it's the one who's not here anymore, presumably.
Oh well.
But there's something else in the
better.
There's something else in the witty banter that says Starry Night, and I don't know what that is either.
Yeah, I've been meaning to ask you about this for weeks, and it's already passed now. I put it in last week's, but we got so focused on my trip through the Keys that we ran out of time. I came across the fact that last Friday, all of the planets were in the sky at the same time.
Yeah.
And so I downloaded this app. I think it's called Starry Night or something.
I believe it is.
I took the dog out, and I was just like, put my phone up to the sky and was looking where all the planets were. It was pretty neat. Did you partake?
You could only see two of them, right?
I saw Jupiter and Mars. I thought
Venus too, maybe.
I definitely saw Jupiter and Mars. Was it Uranus also?
Yeah, you probably
sure.
You can. The thing about Uranus and Neptune is they are visible. They're just very difficult to recognize as planets because they're the same size of stars. They're tiny.
Yeah,
they're little dots.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I just saw that it was
pretty good.
in the sky there.
I didn't. I arranged for all the planets to be in the sky for Carson's birthday. For 'twas Carson's birthday.
Well done.
But just because of sort of random having to do things, I didn't get a chance to go out and look at it. But I know a lot of them were very low in the sky, right? Like Saturn, Mercury, and something else were real low in the sky, and you had to be
I never saw them
at sunset.
I clearly could see Mars and clearly could see Jupiter.
Did you get a drawing of the surface of Mars?
The circle.
As good as mine.
On a sticky note.
A pink sticky note really helps, gives you that Mars feel.
It really does. Yes. Listeners may recall this. It was a lot of episodes ago.
That was a lot of episodes ago, yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get down to business. How did we leave, on the subject of spoiling things, Quentyn Martell? For that, who is who the chapter is all about. Well, we've never met him before, so we didn't leave him anywhere. But what we knew of him was that he'd been seen buying passage to Essos in Planky Town in Dawn. His sister, and she's asked me to stress his older sister, Ariane, believed that he was recruiting the Golden Company to forcefully displace her as their father's heir. But her father, Prince Doran, has denied this, instead stating that Quentyn is on a mission to bring back fire and blood. air quotes
Okay,
applied.
yes.
Mackelly, why don't we give a summary of this one?
All right. Well, Quentyn Martell and Gerris Drinkwater are at the port in Volantis seeking passage to Slaver's Bay. Gerris plays a wine merchant with Quentyn as his servant, and it's not going very well. The captain of the Adventure spells it out. War. Surely confined to just Yunkai and Astapor, right? But soon to reach Meereen. No slaves to be traded and no fighting pits to entertain the sailors. But this captain has a reputation, and a hefty bribe with a bit of flattery sees him agree. They'll leave on the morrow.
When the deal is done, the Westerosi head back to their inn. They both agree that they cannot go with the Adventure. The captain was too feral and too quick to agree to their deal. He has no intention of delivering them to their destination, but rather to the briny depths. They travel in a hathay, seeing the tattooed faces of slaves everywhere. Maester Kedri had said there were 5 slaves for every free man in Volantis. Kedri, Cletus Yronwood, and William Wells had all perished when corsairs swarmed their ship off the disputed lands. The crew had beaten them back, but 12 souls were lost. Now Quentyn's group is just 3, himself, Gerris, and the big man, Archibald Yronwood.
They tried close to 100 ships, but nobody is headed that way. It seems hopeless. Gerris floats the idea of heading over land. Quentyn thinks it's too slow, plus he and his father believe that Tywin will send assassins for Dany when news of her reaches King's Landing. Gerris suggests home, but Quentyn can't face the failure. They see a pillow house, and Gerris, always upbeat, makes lewd comments. Quentyn is more like his father, pessimistic and dour. He's also uncomfortable around girls. He recounts his previous misadventures, a mix of unrequited, confusing, or chaste. But now he'll marry the most beautiful woman in the world because she'll honor the agreement, because she needs Dorne.
Quentyn sees the great black wall of eastern Volantis, within which live only those of the oldest Valyrian blood, and outlanders cannot visit without invitation. A triarch passes on a huge elephant. Quentyn gives Gerris a history lesson on Volantis. In the throngs, Quentyn sees dwarves putting on a jousting pageant, riding pigs and dogs. Quentyn won't stop to watch, but Gerris is interested. They finally arrive back at the merchant's house, home to many foreigners. They see hard-eyed sellswords, the wind blown, asking every passing man and boy if they're interested in joining their ranks. Fighting in Yunkai means coin for brave lads.
One of the sellswords drops into the common tongue to Lord Quentyn. They sing a song of plunder in Slaver's Bay, including what they'll do to Dany. Gerris reckons if they hadn't lost Cletus and Will, they could kill all 4, but Quentyn ignores their taunts. The big man, Archibald Yronwood, is within. Despite the recommendations for this inn, Quentyn won't leave their belongings unguarded. The big man's sobriquet is well earned. He's 6.5 feet tall and has lost all of his hair. He still votes for Overland. Gerris is still for Dorne. And Quentyn is mulling risking the Adventure's murderous captain. But then, Gerris has a thought. It's not honorable, but it will get them to Slaver's Bay.
We'll be right back.
Hello, friends. Are you ready to make some unforgettable memories? Well, if so, consider the Marriott Bonvoy program. Discover the perfect destination for your summer getaway and unlock exclusive deals on luxurious accommodations. With our affiliate partnership, you'll enjoy unbeatable savings and a seamless booking experience. Don't let summer slip away. Visit Marriott Bonvoy today and make this vacation season one for the books. Use our Ghosts of Harrenhal affiliate page to check it all out and buy Bonvoy points or give some as a gift. The link to our page is in the show notes.
Yep. Now, I'll just quickly discuss with you. I think I'm going to spoil what the plan is because I think it's so flipping obvious that it's not a spoiler.
Yeah, I have it on the third one down. Options to
Okay. Well, let's go through that first before I literally spoil it. I'll wait for that. So we've finally met Quentyn. I would say that he is absolutely cut from the same cloth as his father in the same way that Arianne was a foundling. Nothing to do with his father.
I was thinking the same thing. They couldn't be more different as siblings. Definitely Ariane doesn't lack for confidence in wooing the opposite sex.
Right. Yeah.
The way that Quentyn does here. And I would say it's too bad that it's not Ariane sent to woo Viserys, which was basically the original plan, those two. But I wouldn't want to wish that on Ariane, so,
That's true. That's true. We have a soft spot for Ariane. I mean, she's foolish, but it's hard not to like her at the same time. And anyone you like, you don't want to fall into the arms of Viserys.
No.
Joffrey and Viserys, I'm fine with that. Let that happen.
Let those two have each other.
Yeah, but he's very pessimistic and cautious and sort of self-reflective as well. I mean, Gerris isn't wild, but he's just, he sees the joy in life, and it's kind of and Quentyn just can't. He just can't find it. I don't know where I am on this spectrum myself, because I'm not the most optimistic person, but I do love an adventure. If I go to a foreign country, I enjoy just the fact of it, even while dealing with the scary and difficult parts of it. I enjoy whoa, look at what I'm experiencing.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I would say you're probably much closer to Gerris than to Quentyn, at least externally. I don't know what's always going on in your head.
Yeah.
But, you're definitely quick with a quip. Keep things light, and I've always said one of the very first things that I was told about you, our mutual friend Rich and our mutual former colleague, when he was our team lead and my first day at the job where we met, he was telling me I was going to share an office with you, and he said, "You're going to love Simon. Nothing gets to him. Everything is like water off a duck's back." So, externally, anyway. Inside, you might be fuming and, fretting, but we don't see that.
Like a swan, like a duck, in fact, Under the surface, it's all frantic.
Right. So all around, you're basically a duck. There's water off your back, and underneath, you're total chaos.
So I noticed when they were talking about the ships. So I mean, they said they've tried 100 ships now. I mean, that's clearly. There's a point where I give up, and I think 30 or 40 is about that point, because there are no ships going to Slaver's Bay if nobody's going to if the first 30 or 40 aren't. I did notice, I tried to listen to the names of the ships, and I was like, they all seemed kind of familiar, but the only one that actually I could find anything on was the Mermaid's Kiss was one that was mentioned. But then I found out that its prior usage was 150 years ago, so it probably wasn't even the same ship.
Probably not. That ship would be pretty old at this point.
Right. Or at least, if it is the same ship, it's been so frequently, so often replaced that there's nothing in common with the original ship.
Right. I'm pretty sure ships wear pretty heavily out on the salt water.
Perhaps the anchor is the same one.
Maybe. I was thinking that, maybe when you read Mermaid's Kiss, you were thinking of Mermaid's Palace, which we heard about. Sam mentioned it as one of the small islands off the Arbor that the Ironborn took and were using as a base.
Maybe so. But none of the other ships we've come across, I don't think. We hadn't seen them in Bravos or anything like that.
Yeah, none registered with me anyway.
Right. What are the potential ideas that Gerris has just had?
Yeah, so the Adventure, that's the name of the ship. The Adventure captain says he'll take them, but he's a very shady character. And I think they're right to reject that offer.
Yeah. The thing is, if you pay for passage on a ship that's going where you're going, they probably won't throw you overboard. But if you're taking them out of their way to a place they don't want to go, they're definitely going to throw you overboard.
Yeah, it certainly creates a lot more opportunity for issue here.
Especially if the reason they're not going there is because they're afraid of what they'll find when they get there. If it's just out of their way, they might suffer it. But of course, they want more money. Well, if they throw you overboard, then they get all your money.
Yes, right. And who's to stop them at that point when you're out at sea? You know?
Yeah.
So, and there was something going on with that ship. They said it stank horribly, like festering wounds and.
Because it's
all
basically
kinds
a
of...
slave galley, right? So I mean, it's probably the humans in the slave.
Oh, I hadn't made that connection, but yes, you're probably right.
Because actually, that was Quentyn's big hope, that they wouldn't get thrown overboard. They would instead be tied to the oars for the rest of their
Right.
lives.
Yes. Yeah.
Something to look forward to.
Right, yeah. But they were, another reason why this was a red flag, accepting this offer, is because they were rejected by 100 legitimate options that said it's too dangerous to sail into Slaver's Bay. So what are the likelihood that the 101st is like, oh no, we'll do it, and they legitimately follow through?
Plus, the guy wasn't even subtle, because he said, "Oh, I'm not going there. It's too dangerous. We could play you 3 times the normal." Okay, sure.
Right.
It's not too dangerous. I was just holding out for 3 times the normal.
Yeah. So here are some of the options that they come up with. Well, first off, Gerris says, what about a Westerosi ship? That's what we need. We need something out of Old Town or Lannisport. And Quentyn says, not many of Westerosi ships stop in Slaver's Bay or in Volantis. They don't tend to come this far east to begin with. And when they do, they go all the way to the Jade Sea and then bend oars back home. So,
I tell you, there is a chance there, though, and I will mention it. And the story actually pointed to the possibility. It's the ship that Tywin sends with the assassins may stop to resupply in Volantis and will be going to Slaver's Bay.
That is true. They very well may be their best bet.
They might definitely not want to say why they want to go to Slaver's Bay to that particular ship. Just FYI.
Right. Yeah, right. But if it's a ship coming out of Westeros, there is a small chance of at least Quentyn being recognized as the son of the Prince of Dorne. If there are maybe a Dornishman on a Westerosi ship, possibly. But there's a little bit of confusion in his claim about how Westerosi ships don't stop here or at Slaver's Bay. They go all the way east to the Jade Sea and come back. Is later, toward the end of the chapter, when they're back at the merchant's house, he specifically mentions that traders from Old Town and King's Landing mingled with counterparts from Bravasi, from Bravos and Pentos, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, do they or don't they
stop
here?
That's a good point, yeah.
Maybe he meant, and it was, maybe it just wasn't clear enough, they don't stop in Slaver's Bay because they don't have any.
I think that's what they really meant.
There.
They might come to Volantis to trade, but then they're going back home,
Yes, yeah. The wording made it seem they don't come this far east, and when they do, they only go all the way east.
Yeah, the thing about going all the way east is, what do they trade? It just feels like further east than Slaver's Bay, the continent gets less and less populous. That's how I feel, anyway. And I'm like, there is Jade, right?
Yeah. They've got the Jade Sea with Karth and all the little islands, and I guess that's where they hit, is those rare the things that are rare that they could get there.
Yeah.
That are rare in Westeros.
The thing about being a ship owner is you want to always have your holds filled. So what do you take east?
Stuff that they can't get out there that you can find in Westeros, I guess, maybe. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but bear pelts, maybe?
Yes, because it's so flipping hot there. That's what they want.
Yeah, that's what they need.
Anyway, moving on.
Yes.
Sure. So, Bravosi ships are another one that they think about. They think that the Bravosi might give them a ride. I don't know particularly why the Bravosi would be better, different than others, but the same problem there. They don't really go to Slaver's Bay either.
Yeah, and so Quentyn's specific line is Bravasi come from freed slaves, and so they don't do business in Slaver's Bay.
Right.
And I feel like that is the first that we've heard of this. Not that they're descendants of freed slaves. We've known about the history of Bravos, but that they don't do business in Slaver's Bay. It makes some sense. They very much are against slavery. That's why theoretically we talked in the first Tyrion chapter. That's why Pentos theoretically doesn't allow slavery because of the Bravasi influence, but I don't think we'd heard that before, so I just found that interesting.
Yeah.
But then they think about going overland, over the Valerian Road, and the big guy, Archibald Yronwood, is very much in favor of this plan because he has terrible seasickness. So he is all about staying on the solid surface of the Valerian Road. But Quentyn shoots that down, saying it's too dangerous and also too slow. And, I think he brings up the fact that it's called the Demon Road for a reason, because it's a dangerous road.
But Archibald Yronwood is of the opinion there's more glory to be had on the Demon Road than there is on the rolling sea.
Right, yes. But Illyrio kind of backs the danger thing. Remember last chapter, I think it was last chapter, he told Tyrion that Dany could either sail to Volantis or take the Demon Road to Volantis, and if she takes the land route, many are going to die in her large group due to the difficulty of the route. So, but the other issue is that it's too slow, and he fears that Tywin's men will reach Dany before they do. And I thought, if only he knew the chaos in the Red Keep right now, and the fact that Cersei is only concerned about personal vendettas and couldn't care less about talk of dragons in the Far East.
Yep. They consider buying a ship, but to me, buying a ship is the worst of all worlds because they can't sail, they don't know how to sail, so they'd have to hire a crew. And then basically what you've done is you've created a new captain of the adventure who's going to throw you overboard and steal your ship.
Yes. Might as well just cut out the middleman and gone on the adventure in the first place. Yeah, I found it kind of fascinating that despite being descendants of seafaring people and living in a land that has a coastline on 3 sides, the Dornish are not sailors primarily.
Yeah, they must have fishermen, because, they all live coastally, because the middle of their realm is fiery hot. So they must have fishermen. Yeah. But historically, they have a reason, right? When Nymeria came to Dorne, she burned the 10,000 ships that they came on. So, they'd found their home and they burned their ships. I guess that makes you historically not a seafaring race.
Right. It's now built into the culture not to set sails.
Yeah.
Then Gerris suggests, why don't we sail to New Gis and catch a ride from there? And Quentyn says, it gets us closer, but New Gis is an island, and plus they've already aligned with the Yonkai, which makes sense. They're both Giscari. I was looking at the map. It is barely closer. It gets you further east, but you're still in the summer sea outside of the mouth of Slaver's Bay.
Right.
And Meereen is in the top northeast corner of Slaver's Bay. So you're still a long way from your goal. So that one definitely does not... Yeah. And it's a smaller port, he points out. So, harder to find ships.
The last unvoiced possibility is the one that I think is both a spoiler and the only logical conclusion, which is the sellswords, who were annoying and they wanted to kill them, sang a song about going to Slaver's Bay to meet Daenerys Targaryen. And it never occurred to Quentyn that might be a route.
Why would we want to join that group?
Exactly. They were mean about Daenerys.
Right. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that seems like, that's definitely an option. They will take you to Slaver's Bay. Of course, it's got its own inherent dangers. You could end up on a battlefield and, end up in a battle.
But I had a question about that and see what you think. How do sellswords feel about deserters?
Right.
Because they themselves are just one blow of the wind away from turning heel themselves.
Yeah,
so how could they possibly feel about someone who's like, what, looks a bit hot around here, I'm getting out of here?
Well, that's true. I had never thought about how the sellsword captains feel about sellswords within their own ranks.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, okay, so, let's say they don't end up on a battlefield and don't get killed in the process of deserting. Brown Ben Plum's second sons are south of Meereen, watching the road from Yunkai. So that it both poses an opportunity and a problem.
Yes.
Because if you can get to Brown Ben Plum and say, we're Westerosi, we are here to support Dany, I have a message to deliver to Dany, that might...
Ding, ding, ding. Yes.
Yeah. However, you have to get to that point of convincing someone that has no clue who you are, that you are someone who is not a spy or in some way going to do harm to Dany.
Yeah. So I have two thoughts about that. One is, how do they get on the road without any... I think one idea would be, if I were them, the windblown captain, well, he's a sellsword. Maybe when they get there, he can be like... Quentyn could sidle up to him and say, hey, you know what? I'm from Westeros. I speak the same language as this Daenerys lady. Why don't you send me up there and see if I can get us a better deal fighting for her?
Oh, yeah.
And then, as you're on the road waiting for Brown Ben Plum's spies to find you, you sing in Westerosi, in the common tongue, as loud as you can, so that they know you're from Westeros. Yeah.
I was wondering if having a Westerosi accent, which we never really hear much about accents in Westeros, but we do hear about accents between Essos and Westeros.
Yes, so, because there's more languages in Essos, and a variety of languages, but people recognize the common tongue of Westeros, and so they would know them to be Westerosi.
So, maybe speaking Westerosi without any sort of Essosi accent might be some sort of proof that they are really Westerosi.
Yeah.
But I like your idea. The one of the sellswords mentions fighting alongside or fighting for the tattered prince. So it seems like maybe that is the captain of the Windblown.
Right. So one of the things that the captain of the Adventure mentions is that he doesn't have anything for his sailors to do in Meereen because the fighting pits are closed. And Dany was warned about the financial repercussions of the fighting pits closing. We didn't really think of... I mean, we thought, she could get taxes on the fighting, but we didn't think about the fact that it would hamper trade. Now, I'm not sure it's the primary reason ships aren't coming, but it doesn't help.
Right. There's even less incentive to pull oars toward Meereen. Yes, war is the largest issue that is going to prevent money and trade getting to Meereen.
Possibly also Dany's reputation. Hey, we've come on this ship to trade with you. Ooh, a ship, you say?
I'm going to put that to good use. That's my ship now.
My ship, until I sink it and use it for firewood.
Right. Oh. But it certainly feels like, even if the physical war between Yunkai and Astapor doesn't make it to Meereen, which it looks like it's possibly heading that way, but if it doesn't, there's still the financial hardships of the fact
which makes trading far less likely. They're not going to trade things. They're busy hoarding things for war. Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and it just feels like there's more unrest to come with traders generally avoiding Slaver's Bay and Meereen, inside the walls of Meereen.
Yeah. Although there is a flip side to that. If you think about this, if you were to fill your holds with things of war, like durable food and weapons and armor and things, and things that someone would need in a war, you could get gold for that. Because the one thing Dany doesn't need is gold. She can't give you any stuff. They need their stuff. But she could spend all the gold she's stumbled into.
That's true.
A brave
I can't
captain
think of why that would
that.
work.
Yeah,
right.
Although, you have to carry it home down the Demon Road because she's stolen your ship. But,
Right. She'll give you a wheelbarrow. But their ruse holds water, or should I say wine. Their ruse that they're wine merchants, because in that Dany chapter, she thought to herself that the Giscari wine was quite poor.
Right.
But you'd have to question what idiots would venture into Warzone to sell wine,
Right. Yeah. I mean, her shenanigans have made their story not be, just not be very plausible anymore. It's plausible
Right.
as a cover story, but it's never going to convince a captain to go in there. But again, I will say that is something they might pay gold for, even in a wartime, they might pay gold for that.
For good wine, if they could get there.
Yeah. We mentioned that 3 of the 6 members of Quentyn's original party were lost in when Corsairs invaded the ship they were on, and it mentioned that it was moored off the disputed lands when it happened, and I couldn't remember what was meant by that, but it's the it's the part between Mere, Lys, and Tirosh that's constantly been contested over the centuries between those 3. So basically, it's kind of vaguely a peninsula, and they were moored off that when the Corsairs attacked them.
Yeah, and it's not too far from the Stepstones, which is just a haven for pirates.
Right.
But yeah, their party was cut in half. It was originally 6, which it should have been 7. I mean, let's face it, that's a much luckier number.
Oh,
in Westeros,
interesting.
What were they thinking going with a party of 6? They were doomed for trouble.
Wow, you've got a good point. Well played, Mackelly.
Yeah. So the 3 they lost was Maester Kedry, Cletus Ironwood, who happens to be Quentyn's best friend and basically foster brother, because most of Quentyn's life he's been fostered with the Ironwoods. And Willem Wells was the 3rd member. And of course, Cletus, being his best friend for his whole life, was the most painful, but he thinks, in all honesty, the loss of Maester Kedry is probably the most costly, because Kedry, I don't think we mentioned this in the summary, but he has spent half of his life studying Essos in the Free Cities, and he was primed to be pretty helpful.
Yes. I mean, obviously, his language skills, if nothing else, would have been very useful while they were trying to recruit this. But honestly, just speaking the language would not have convinced any captain. Oh, you speak my tongue. In that case, I'll sail into the pit of doom.
That's true. That is true. At least he had studied the customs and traditions of, many Essosi cultures. Maybe that would be helpful. Right now, it's kind of the blind leading the blind, muddling their way through mishaps and ill-informed decisions, most likely at this point.
We'll be right back.
This episode is sponsored by Audible. To get a free audiobook, or 2 if you're an Amazon Prime member, go to our exclusive URL, audibletrial.com/ghostsharrenhal. You can find the link in our show notes.
The boys travel back from the dock in a hathay, and I mentioned it in the thing, but I didn't say what it was. It's a sort of ornate ox cart pulled by a dwarf elephant that the driver rides upon the elephant. And we know that this driver actually is the innkeeper's brother. That's why he's working with them. But they were told they couldn't walk around town. They would be seen as beggars if they walked. They had to ride this thing.
Right. Yes. And they saw a few sights while they were in this hathay, and there were a couple that stood out to me because they were curious. One, we see ornate Syvas pieces being sold, and that's because, it might not just be because, but we learned that Syvas originated in Volantis. So I guess, he put in Martin put in a little Easter egg there, I guess, about
and we also
Syvas
saw
pieces.
Dwarves gearing up for a joust, and I feel like we've seen this before somewhere.
Yes. The whole, I mean, it was a quick scene. It was only a few sentences, but it was very similar to the show put on at Joffrey and Marjorie's wedding to humiliate Tyrion and Sansa. The 2 dwarfs were, one wore a direwolf, costume. The other wore a stag. They were dressed like they were knights, and they were going to joust on this pig and this dog.
And it was a pig and dog. That was the other
exactly.
similarity. Yeah, there was a pig and a dog here.
It was meant to mock Robert and Stannis and Renly, and yeah, maybe that's a traditional show down in Essos. It's curious.
I hope
worth pointing out.
Yeah, I hope it's the same dwarves and they fled. And I do find it a little bit strange that they brought the pig and dog with them. If I was fleeing from Cersei, because basically it's open season on dwarves in Westeros,
Very true.
I might leave the pig and dog behind.
If you needed to. Or that's how they got away, riding the pig and the dog.
Trust the sea.
It's the fastest means.
And they see a triarch, who is, it's an elected prince of Volantis. We see him riding on a huge elephant. So these guys serve 1 year. They have to be of unimpeachable Valyrian bloodlines to be eligible. But all landowners are allowed to vote for them, including women. Their feet aren't supposed to touch the ground, so elevated are they? And that's why we see him riding on this huge elephant, and everyone gets out of the way, as you would, honestly.
Right. Yeah. And I was thinking about the fact that they only serve for 1 year. They can be reelected, but they, their term is 1 year, and during this 1 year, they're treated with such revere that their feet aren't even allowed to touch the ground. And I thought that would be literally really hard to come back to Earth afterward, despite the fact they're all likely wealthy and have great prosperity. They might forget how to walk, expecting to be carried everywhere, and their friends are like, "Hey, your time is up. It's, strap on those sandals. You're going walking.
Here's the ladder. Get down."
Right. Yeah. But Illyrio suggests...
It'd be like coming back from the International Space Station. Your legs wouldn't be able to hold you. You'd be like...
Right. Yeah, it'd be so unused to the motion of walking yourself. But speaking of the Triarchs, Quentyn worries about the danger for Dany if Volantis aligns with the Yonkai. And it does seem like a strong possibility because she's working to eradicate slavery. And now Illyrio, last chapter, when Illyrio and Tyrion were talking, Illyrio suggested that the Triarchs would back Dany. And so I don't know, maybe Quentyn doesn't quite grasp the history of the war between Gis and Valyria, and the history between Volantis and Valyria, which we'll get to in background. But it is stated both in that chapter and this chapter that there is a 5-to-1 ratio between slaves and freedmen. So common ancestry is one thing, but this city is built on slavery. So if they feel like that might be threatened, I could see them backing Yonkai to keep this situation.
I mean, that's so many slaves. You wonder how much slave trade is needed in Volantis. I mean, that's just so many.
True. So you're thinking they would just have their own continual source,
or play the long game. They're like, you know what? Hey, we're going to help you win back Westeros. Why don't you shuffle on your way there, young lady? Take your dragons with you.
Yes. That is something I've been thinking about this whole time that no one is in the story has mentioned is get her back on the Iron Throne and she will be a world away.
Whether we help her or not, she is disrupting the slave trade right now. If she goes back to Westeros, we can go back to business. Yeah.
Right. Yes. I do think that is something that someone should have thought about by now.
So Volantis is at the mouth of the Rhoyne, and I got kind of interested in the Rhoyne as we were reading this chapter. It is a mighty river. It's reminiscent of perhaps the Mississippi, which would make Volantis sort of the New Orleans of this continent. Very few rivers in our world run from north to south the way the Rhoyne is doing, because the Rhoyne is basically...
Really?
Yeah, very few. The Mississippi is the one most obvious example. The Mekong slightly does, but it sort of moves south east. And the Paraguay River in Paraguay runs very north-south, which is interesting. The Nile runs south-north.
Which is even more rare, right? Not many rivers run south to north.
Partly because you don't know of the rivers that flow into the sea north of Canada and north of Russia. They exist but you don't know
yeah.
about them. You know what I mean? Because they're
Yeah.
kind of in the middle of nowhere.
There
But
is
yes,
a river that runs south to north that I'm quite familiar with, and that is the Monongahela River, which is one of the two rivers that meet in Pittsburgh and make the Ohio River, the Allegheny being the other.
but the Ohio River eventually goes to the Mississippi, right? Oh no, it goes to the
Yes.
Atlantic. It goes to the Mississippi.
Yeah, pretty sure
Right.
Mississippi.
Right. So, the Rhoyne's Basin is absolutely huge. Now, the Mississippi Basin is huge because it's everything basically south of the Great Lakes, and then between the Rockies and the Appalachians.
Right.
All rain that falls there dribbles down into the Mississippi. I mean,
Continental divide.
the continental divides. That's what they are. The continental divides divide where the water goes. So that's a huge part of the United States feeds into the Mississippi, basically. You know, most of it. You know, like 80% of it.
Right.
But the Rhoyne's Basin is even bigger. It's absolutely enormous. And some people have done some estimates that it might be as much as 6 miles wide at its widest, the Rhoyne.
Wow. 6 miles.
Yeah,
wide.
given the geography of Essos, that makes a certain amount of sense. And
Yeah.
actually, one of the reasons, looking at Essos, there's a sort of vague similarity to Asia. And
Sure. Yeah.
one thing that Asia has is the Himalayas. That sort of stops any rivers from flowing south because there's huge blocker at the bottom of Asia. Some rivers flow out of the Himalayas and down, but they're not that big because it's quite close to the bottom of the continent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and I will say it breaks down into a delta, the Rhoyne, and so it's got tributary. Actually, they're not called tributary rivers. Tributaries are where rivers come together. They're called distributaries. I did not know this word, but I learned this word. So it distributes itself into 4. I think they mentioned 4 major threads, and Volantis is on
it'll come up in. It'll come up in background.
There you go.
About that specifically.
So Quentyn is queasy about his chances with Dany, and he thinks to himself, why would the most beautiful woman in the world want him? He's dowdy even in comparison to Gerris. Gerris is more of a catch than he is physically.
Right.
She does need Dawn. I mean, if you're weighing things up in his mind, she does need Dawn, but does it really need a marriage to cement that alliance? That's a question,
Yeah.
If I were Dany, I'd be like, you owe me your allegiance. I don't have to marry you.
True. I'm your queen.
Exactly.
So you need to bend the knee.
Right.
That doesn't mean that we have to get married. Yeah, I could see that.
And then Dany believes that she's barren. What effect would that have on both their positions?
That is true. Yes.
Would
right.
Quentyn be like, wait, what's the point of me marrying her if we can't have issue?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, his older sister, Ariane, is the heir, and the Martell children will flow through her line.
Right. So it would be personal
Dany,
glory for him. He would get to sit the
Yes.
Iron Throne with Dany.
Yes. And if she is barren, her line ends with her regardless.
Yes.
So what happens to him if he outlives her? Yeah, it gets complicated. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And are we sure she's barren? Because I got thinking about that. And is it because Mirri Maz Duur told her that? But if Mirri Maz Duur told her that, she wasn't. I'm just thinking about Mirri Maz Duur's frame of mind the moment she told her that she was.
Right.
She was not particularly likely to say something reassuring to Dany. I know it's a dark day, Dany. I just murdered your child and basically your husband too. And I appreciate that you are going to put me to death at the end of this. But on the bright side, there should be no lasting damage to your reproductive organs. That is not a likely scenario, I feel.
No,
instead, she's going to double down and say, not only that, you're never going to have a kid either.
Right. Yeah. The context has to be taken into consideration here. Mm-hmm. Now, I went and copied the exact prophecy so that we could consider what she said to Dany. And she said, when the sun rises in the west and sets in the east, when the seas go dry and the mountains blow in the wind like leaves, when your womb quickens again and you bear a living child, then he, Drogo, she didn't say that, she said he, I'm saying Drogo, will return.
So actually, if you think about it, maybe that she's saying, "No, you're fine. He's coming back. You just have to get pregnant."
Well, so there's at least one thing there that you can speculate on. When the sun rises in the west and sets in the east. Now we've got Quentyn Martell, who's a Martell, whose sigil is a sun and spear.
Okay.
He rose in the west.
He did.
And now he is in the east. So, maybe has some factor. Maybe he's going to prove that she is not barren. They will have children together. Maybe they will live happily ever after.
Interesting.
So now whether Mary Masdura would have a clue who, what the sigils are of the houses of Dorne is another thing that could be debated, I guess. But, the other things we don't really have much to go on, at least thus far in this story. There's some speculation out there, but nothing that we've got a lot of concrete evidence on yet.
There is one thing, and this is sort of getting into sort of like female anatomy. If she isn't menstruating, then she might know she's barren.
True.
I don't know if sort of prehistoric women understood the connection, but I'm assuming that they did because they stop menstruating while they're pregnant, so
Right.
They know there's a connection between those two things. And so maybe she literally knows that she's barren,
Yeah, could be. We have not gotten any context to give us a clue on that. Not that I can recall anyway.
Yeah.
But there's some thoughts like when the seas go dry, some people think that maybe is in regards to the Dothraki Sea. Possibly with winter coming, the grass is drying up, dying out, going dormant, whatever. And, when the mountains blow in the wind like leaves, possibly having something to do with the mountain's death.
Right.
That's,
Yeah.
There's
Also,
other theories, but
if you want to get more poetic, it could be the Slaver's Bay has gone dry for slaves,
Yeah, some people think that possibly that the mountains blowing in the winds like leaves has something to do with the pyramids in Meereen.
Yeah, interesting.
So, yeah. But anyway, she thinks she is barren, exactly.
Yeah. So you've written here that there's two opposing plans. Which would Dany choose? But I don't know what you mean by two opposing plans. I know one of the plans. It's Quentyn's plan, which is, hey, we have a piece of paper here saying Targaryen marry Martell to take back the Iron Throne. What's the alternative?
Yes.
Just saying no.
Yeah. So we've got this plan, the one you just laid out, and we've also got Illyrio and Varys' plan to have Dany sail to Volantis, meet Dany in Volantis, and then whisk her off to Westeros at the head of the Golden Company army, basically to take back the Iron Throne. Possibly the two could go together.
True. That's what I was going to say, yeah.
She could still marry Quentyn and then sail to Volantis. And hey, look at that. There's a huge army here waiting for me. How nice. Yeah. But if she, if the two plans can't go together, which plan, if she had to pick one, which plan would she choose? Now, first off, the boys here, they've got a head start. They're already in Volantis.
Yeah.
And they're trying to get to her. The other plan involves they still have to get to the Rhoyne, sail down the Rhoyne, and then wait for her to come to them.
Yeah.
So there's some differences. But okay, so here's what you got. Illyrio and Varys. The Golden Company, about 10,000 fighting men. However, their roots began with Blackfires, who are known to rebel against the Targaryens. Yeah. That may or may not be a problem. You also get the backing of Illyrio Mopatis financially, which is something not to thumb your nose at.
Yep.
He's rather wealthy, has a lot of gold, and you already have a connection with him, as he helped her and Viserys, but he also was kind of party to the whole not selling her because Dothraki don't buy and sell, but the giving her to Khal Drogo, which went well, but didn't necessarily. Illyrio admitted to Tyrion he didn't think it was going to go well. He didn't think she would last long.
Right.
So, that could be a plus or a minus there. You get the backing of Varys and his huge spy network, especially in King's Landing and the Red Keep. You get the backing of Tyrion. Smart, knows the enemy. So,
yeah,
that's the one hand.
I'll say what you said. The best way to do this is to say yes to everything. She can't afford to have any less allies than she already has. She can't afford to get rid of Jorah Mormont.
Right.
That was a third of her army right there.
Right. If she goes with this plan, with Quentyn's plan, she gets the support of Dorne.
Yeah.
The military strength we know has been exaggerated. At least according to Doran. George Martin has said their strength is similar to what the North and the Vale could pull together. So it's not nothing, but Doran thinks it's less than all the other of the Seven Kingdoms. So,
I'll say though, I'll interject on that I think if she were to come to Westeros without the dragons being ready for action, Dorne is a good place to go.
That was one of the points I was about to bring up. A home base in Westeros that is fairly safe from invasion from the Iron Throne. We learned even Aegon the Conqueror struggled with trying to invade Dorne.
Because that's what the Dornish army has got. It can defend itself. It may not be able to win the Seven Kingdoms, but it can defend itself. So she and the dragons would be safe as they want to be for as long as they want to be.
Right. Yes. And they're closer. They're not all the way in the far east while these dragons grow. They're right in striking distance. Right. And of course you get the backing of the Martells, and they definitely have a debt to pay with the Lannisters and would likely be very solid, loyal partners.
Yeah. I've got to say, I do wonder if the Martells might want to think about how well it goes making deals with the Targaryens. Not that the Targaryens betrayed them, they didn't, but it's risky.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm going to assume that they're going to join this sellsword army, the Windblown. I do think because of that, I think it's slightly fortuitous that Maester Kadri did die, because the one person in this group who would have looked odd joining the sellswords is a Maester with a chain around his neck. Why would a Maester be joining the sellswords?
Well, if Thoros of Myr can be a fighting Red Priest of R'hllor, maybe a Maester can get in there.
But he's a fighting priest. He proved it by winning melees in grand tournaments. Yeah,
right.
Maester Kadri is. What can you do? Oh, I can speak 9 languages. Yeah,
he'd probably have to go incognito. I would think.
But I do think there's some risk to it as well, because if you join a recruiting class of a band of sellswords, it might be full of slightly hot-headed, violent types, and you're going to be the only Westerosi in that group.
Likely, yeah.
The big man, the 6'6" Archibald Yronwood, very handy for that moment. It's sort of like what was the Gene Wilder and Stir Crazy? Do you ever see that movie, Stir Crazy? When they go to jail and they're kind of like trying to act tough. That's how Quentyn and Gerris are going to have to be. It will be very handy to have the 6.5-foot guy standing behind them, I think.
True.
But at the same time, he's also going to attract the one who wants to punch the big guy,
Right, to prove how tough he is.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's not specifically stated what the plan is, but if you put a few pieces together, it does seem like that's where this is headed.
Right. All right, time for some spoilers. If you join us at the higher tiers of the Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer levels, you can get the spoilers. All right, fantastic spoilers. Thank you, appreciate it. All right, how about some background for us?
All right, well, so let's talk about Volantis, since Tyrion and Griff are headed here, and the boys are here right now. So Volantis is a large city that spans the easternmost of the 4 mouths of the Rhoyne. Like I mentioned earlier, that was going to come up here.
You did, yes.
It is the oldest and most populous of the 9 free cities, and for its first 100-ish years, it was little more than a military outpost meant to protect the border of the Valyrian freehold. However, merchants noticed the benefits of its location on the Rhoyne and began to exploit it for trade purposes, and soon a town grew up around the Black Wall, which once enclosed the garrison, and the town expanded to both sides of the river. The east side is the older side, known as Old Volantis. The Black Wall now protects the oldest part of the eastern side. These days, inside the Black Wall, you will find palaces, temples, towers, courtyards, things of that nature. The 2 sides of the city are connected by a bridge known as the Long Bridge, and we'll talk more about that another day, but it was built by the Valyrians during the height of their power. The eastern side is still considered the more powerful and affluent side, as most of the voting population lived there.
Right.
Now, there's one other thing I wanted to mention that comes up in this chapter. Gerris mentions to Quentyn that they should look for Bravasi ships, as purple sails are seen as far away as Asshai. So why is Gerris associating purple sails with Bravasis? Well, the Bravasi discovered a certain sea snail that they used to make purple dye, similar to the dyes made by the Tyrashi. Using this dye, they paint their sails and hulls of their ships purple. You might recall from Arya's chapter as Cat of the Canals, her kind of foster sister Brea sold her wares at the Purple Harbor, which only houses Bravasi ships, hence the name.
Interesting. Very nice. Well done. All right, comparison with the television show, easy for once. I often flaff around trying to get the comparison with the television show, but this is easy because they completely dropped this. Quentyn Martell didn't exist, and they gave up on the whole thing. So this one just didn't happen.
You would have spent a lot of time searching for that.
And pedantry, I couldn't see any pedantry here either. So
no, me either. I mean, the whole thing with Quentyn saying Westerosi don't often come this far east, and when they do, they go straight to the Jade Sea. That's a good one,
actually. I'll give you that.
But he might, the character just might not know. He might not be fully informed on the matter.
But he was seeing these Westerosi there. They were there. It wasn't like...
Right, that's true. They
were something.
It's not like they hadn't arrived at the merchant's house before.
Right.
So they likely had seen the Westerosi
before. Had breakfast with all these Westerosi. Wonder how they got here, because there's never any ships. All right. News and notes.
Well, first off, George Martin announced on his blog, he posted a picture of a cover for the illustrated edition of A Feast for Crows. The edition will be available on shelves in November of 2025, and it will contain 24 illustrations from artist Jeffrey R. McDonald and a special foreword by Joe Abercrombie. They'll be sharing previews of some of the artwork between now and November, and I know we've already wrapped up Feast, but I have collected the illustrated editions to this point, so I will be going back to pick up that one. And if you're so inclined as I am, pre-orders are currently available. I don't know that I'll be doing that much, but I will be picking it up at some point.
And as soon as this drops, there'll be a Buy Me a Coffee Sustainer call. It comes up pretty much. If you're listening to this, quickly jump on the call. We're there waiting for you. I'm sure we'll have a great time. We always do.
That we do. And we'll, of course, give the listeners who weren't privy to the call a little rundown of how it went. We usually
we'll hold some stuff back, Mackelly.
Oh yes, of course. You got to be there.
Exactly.
Yeah. And we got a review. So
it's been a while.
It has been a while. So I hope I remember how this goes. This is from Grim Creeper 87 from Apple Podcasts in the US. So the title is The Dynamic Duo of A Song of Ice and Fire.
I call Batman.
Dang it. It was too slow. Now I got to be Robin. All right. So the review goes like this. Listen past the first episode. I appreciate that.
That's a good point.
I appreciate mentioning that. Yeah. These guys figure out the sound quality and quickly draw you further into this amazing world that George R.R. Martin has created. The way they break down each chapter without spoiling the story is impressive. Truly one of the best podcasts I've ever listened to, and the banter between Simon and Mackelly is phenomenal. Well, thank you for that. These guys are part of my daily life now, and I would invite any other GOT fans to welcome them into their lives as well.
Oh, thank you so much,
Wow.
Grim Creeper 87. That's very, very nice.
Yes, thank you. And I believe I know who this is on our Discord community because I was chatting with them last week, and they mentioned they were going to post a review. So
I shall go hunt them down. All right, let's conclude this one. So Gerris has a plan to get them out of Meereen. Again, as I mentioned, I'm not sure how the sellswords feel about deserters, but since they themselves are on a hair trigger for deserting, it doesn't feels like they should be less uptight about it.
Right, yes, come and go as you please.
Exactly. Really. Yeah. I mean, if you go, you're not getting paid, so
right.
No skin off our nose.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But will it help? This is the bit we haven't actually talked about really much here. Is Dany is not beholden in any way to this contract that never mentioned her, and to which she was not a party in the first place. I mean, she could totally ignore this. She needs Dawn, but again, as we said, she's their queen. She could ask them to just fall into line, please.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that till you brought it up. That is true. It's not like she is just a lady who needs an alliance. She's the queen.
Yeah.
She has their alliance, or they're in violation,
Right. And why did they have this contract? Because they're natural allies. And so be my ally. You don't want to marry me anyway. I'm barren,
She does. I guess a lot would depend on what her mindset is right now. Last we checked in on her, she seemed very focused on the politics in Slaver's Bay and in Meereen specifically. Will she realize, my ultimate goal is to win the Iron Throne in Westeros, and this would be a step in that right direction.
Right.
Of course, Quentyn isn't showing up with the armada of ships to take her and her people back either. So
just a legally not binding contract. That's all he's got.
Right. Yeah.
And a slightly better looking friend.
Right. Something about that is, Quentyn, we get his own description of himself, and that can often be kind of, for a lot of people, defacing, I guess.
I think of our generation, Mackelly. I think the younger generation, they're fine with.
He may be self-effacing a bit here and not really seeing the true qualities that he has. But, Dany, yes, she is politically minded. She does know she likely needs to marry for political purposes. But she's also a young girl who we've been in her head, and the people she tends to be attracted to are confident, bordering on arrogant, and kind of swashbuckling.
Good point.
Brash, loud. So I worry that she's going to not just get a look at Quentyn, but kind of get a feel of his vibe and be like, this guy just doesn't do it for me at all.
That's good. That is a good point, yeah. It does seem that Illyrio might have miscalculated the Volantene Triarch's support for Dany. He's pretty confident of it. And now we're here, we're like, you know what? There's a lot of vested interest in the slave trade here. It's hard to imagine them being too thrilled with Dany.
Yeah, but like you said, maybe they'll support her just to get her out of town.
Just to keep her, yeah.
Get her on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
And, like I mentioned, this plan is in competition with Illyrio and Varys' plan for Dany, but as we discussed, so now we've got a race to Meereen, kind of an amazing race, if you will. The boys have the head start. They could get to her first and ruin the other plan, but as we discussed, each plan doesn't have to be in contrast to the other, at least the details that we're privy to at the moment. Quentyn, she could marry Quentyn and get the backing of Dorne and still join forces with Griff and the Golden Company and Illyrio and Varys.
Yep.
And just real quick, do we really think that Varys does not know at all about this Martell plot? Quentyn is sure that Varys has spies in Sunspear, and It just seems like an awfully big plot for him not to have any idea it's coming.
Well, Arianne didn't see it coming, but I'm not thinking Arianne is as attuned to the whispers of the court the way that Varys' spies would be.
Right, yes. It just seems like it's a big... I wonder if they pulled it off and he never saw it coming, if he would applaud them, like,
Yeah.
well done.
Yeah.
You got one over on me. I did not see it coming in the least.
So, next week we're moving from the sweltering heat of Volantis to the icy cold of the Wall. I guess we're checking in with Jon.
Yeah, that's right. So
Okay.
you better get your Snuggie ready.
Yeah.
It's going to be cold.
There's 3 ways that you can help us out. You can leave us a positive review and a 5-star rating, the way that Grim Creeper 87 did. You could buy us a cup of Arbor Gold at buymeacoffee.com/ghostsharrenhal. There you can become a sustainer at any of the various levels. There's a level to suit your budget and your interest. The higher levels get you the spoilers. Or you can donate directly to our cause through our website, ghostsofharrenhal.buzzsprout.com.
And if you're looking for more ways to interact with us, well, first off, you can send us a text. The link is at the top of every episode's show notes. And if you're interested in keeping up on the latest Ghosts of Harrenhal news and developments, well, you should check us out on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter at Ghost Harrenhal, or on Facebook, Instagram, Discord, and YouTube.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.